Today on the Ascent Health, we are talking about how not to be on a diet with Kylie Viens, a registered dietitian. So often in midlife, we're told that our metabolism is slowing down, and we talk about whether or not that is actually true, and if it is, what we can do about it, and then how we can eat for health, how we can eat to feel good and not have our diet for the rest of our lives be a self-deprivation. So let's dive in. All right, welcome back to On the Ascent Health. I am here with Kylie Viens. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You are a dietitian.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me today. So yeah, I'm a dietitian and diabetes educator. I've been doing this for a little over 8 years now. So I started off in the outpatient setting, and then now I am the owner of my own online private practice.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
what got you into it?
Dietetics.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't even know the right word for it. So perfect.
Yeah.
Dietetics.
Yeah, so I think I was like most 18-year-olds who went to college and wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but sort of sitting down and reflecting one day, I knew I wanted to help people. I just didn't know what capacity right then and there. And then I took a nutrition class and I was like hooked from there. And during that time, I was also playing college basketball, so I really enjoyed or admired how you feel your body impacts your performance. And so I naturally thought I would be a sports dietitian. But the further into my studies, I figured and learned that the general population needs help. And so that's sort of what became my focus. Yeah, that's sort of what got me going.
And yeah, what do you enjoy about it?
So I would say now what I really love about what I do is being able to help people become a better version of themselves through food. So that can maybe mean for somebody becoming healthier. It can mean maybe better energy levels or being more confident. So things along those lines.
What are some like myths about being a dietitian that you'd like to maybe clear up for us? Because for me, like I hate like my idea is like I hate to tell people what to eat,
Right.
right? Like that would be hard.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think I've had people say like, "What do you do? Like, do you give people meal plans or like you put people on diets that we think of diets and restriction and like we're the food police. We're going to take your favorite foods, right?"
Make
But
you throw away everything in your cabinets, right?
yeah.
Like
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I would say it's complete opposite, where we're trained to provide medical nutrition therapy. So really, that's an evidence-based, individualized approach to help somebody treat a certain medical condition. And again, using a very tailored eating plan, lifestyle plan to help get the results that they're looking for.
yeah. Got it.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's talk about this word diet then.
Mhm.
Like what does diet actually mean? What does it kind of mean culturally? How do those differ?
Yeah. No, I think it's a really good question. And I think in my last response I gave you, I actually used the word eating plan. I don't think there's anything wrong with the word diet itself. It's just the fact that when we think of that again, we think restriction, deprivation,
Right.
we're taking away, right?
So
So
diet should be just like what we eat. That's our
yeah,
diet.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I really look at diet as more of like an eating plan, again, to help somebody meet their specific needs and preferences, and also making sure that's a very safe and helpful way of going about it. Like, as far as using strategies to enable to move them towards the results that they're looking for.
Got it. The word diet, going back to that, like
Yep.
how does that affected maybe the way that we think about food? The fact that like diet culture and everybody's on a diet and specifically like women in their midlife, like that used to
Hmm.
be, well, now teenage kids and 8-year-olds are going on diets, but like women in midlife
Yeah.
used to be a very common time for people to go on a diet.
Yeah.
How has that, yeah, shifted through time and affected the way we think about food?
Yeah, I feel like we think of like diet culture now, we're not looking at the individual. So no matter what diet it is, right? There's a lot of them out there, whether they're science backed or not. Well, I would say the science backed one probably is more looking at the individual, right, for what they have going on. But the ones that aren't, they're not looking at the individual. It's this set of rules or guidelines.
Typically for weight loss too.
Yeah, I would say definitely geared towards that. Like that's a big motivator for folks. And then you have your good foods and bad foods within that. And then, if we don't do the thing or we fall off, then we kind of like reflect that on ourselves versus the diet is most likely set up to not be a sustainable
Right.
long-term thing. It's looking for quick fixes, unfortunately. And it becomes a cycle if we're not approaching it the correct way.
Yeah. I feel like that quick fix thing, it comes up a lot. We were talking about it yesterday. It's like so much of like modern culture is looking for the quick fix and like in
Yeah.
terms of like your health, like working out, there's no quick fix. Like
Mm-mm.
you need to like get exercise and diet. there isn't good quick fixes either. It's a long-term plan and
And consistency, we live in a culture too where boredom is not cool, and so doing the same thing over and over to get the results we want in a healthy, sustainable way, that's not as intriguing as something that's instant, right?
right.
And gratifying, but then it's can backfire on us very much.
Yeah. So there are like in midlife, right? We're talking to women in their midlife. There are metabolic changes that are happening. Women are more likely to put on weight. Like, what is happening and why is that a thing that we encounter in our 40s and up?
Yeah. So on a basic level, we know our metabolism changes in midlife because of shifts in our hormones, our muscle mass, and our lifestyle. So for women specifically, we're seeing a drop or decline in the estrogen during perimenopause and menopause. And so that actually promotes women to lose bone faster, which is a risk factor, right, for osteopenia, osteoporosis, and then obviously fractures down the road. At the same time, and we tend to lose lean muscle mass, which is our body's main metabolic engine. So we're not burning the fuel as efficiently. And then if you add in like less sleep, more stress, or a less active routine, it's easy to see why weight gain is common. And then of course we're compounding this, and then those changes can also raise risks for things like high blood pressure, cholesterol, insulin resistance, things like that.
So if you maintain muscle mass or put on muscle mass, which is harder to do in your midlife and are more active, then your metabolism doesn't necessarily slow down.
Yeah, it's gonna so you're saying if we use the exercise, right, to help,
Yeah.
preserve our muscle mass, our bone mass, yeah, it's definitely, like, gonna help us preserve what's there and, like, right, be the engine to keep our body burning most efficiently.
But does our metabolism, does it have to slow down or could it?
That's a really good question. I think if somebody's very diligent about
Yeah.
what they're doing, I don't know. It's like a natural decline in our bone loss and muscle loss over the
Right.
years, but if somebody's very intentional about the lifestyle and
Right.
like yeah, what they're doing, eating, stress management,
Right. I'm like,
sleeping.
I'm more muscular than I was a couple years ago. So I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe actually like so far I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, you're definitely on the right track, I would say. I'm not sure if I know the answer to the question, but as far as, I just know that there's like the natural,
right.
decline of and changes, right, with hormones as well.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. So how do we address those changes and right, like the weight gain that can come on without going on a diet, without depriving ourselves? What are some good, strategies or ways of thinking about it?
Yeah. So, and really, this is all goes for all seasons or phases of life in my mind. I would say the key is balance, not restriction. And if we can use midlife as a time to not think about eating less, but rather about eating smarter to help support your metabolism through food and other lifestyle factors, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about, such as movement, proper sleep, managing stress, those kind of things. But I really put together like 5 different things as far as what we can think about when it comes to the eating part of it. And so number 1 would be prioritize protein.
Okay.
It's a foundation. Protein helps maintain and rebuild lean muscle. Just one of the many things that it does, which that's going to help keep our metabolism strong that we've talked about. That takes sort of a brunt, right?
What kind of proteins do you recommend? Or maybe it depends on people and tolerances too.
Yeah, yeah, I have some ideas there. But also what protein besides helping to maintain and rebuild the lean muscle, it's also helping to minimize bone loss. But yeah, so getting to like what are the kinds, right? First I'll go into like, well, what's the research kind of showing that's the right amount?
Yeah.
So a good rule of thumb is 25 to 30 grams at each of our meals of protein, and that would be ideal. So if you're having like right now, like say a piece of toast right now with breakfast, granted, like depending on what type of bread you're buying, you can have a little bit more protein in it than
Like
others.
maybe 5 grams. Yeah. I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
there's not a lot.
Right, yeah. Not like this like robust source, but say we add like an egg or 2 onto that, then
Mhm.
that's gonna bulk it up. Or if you're only eating fruit for breakfast, could you pair it with some like Greek yogurt, right? Something along those lines. Or if you're having like a salad for lunch, could you put like some sort of like fish or chicken or steak on it, or other convenient sources of protein people like on their salads could be like, some people are cottage cheese fans, or even your hard boiled egg, something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think so that's number 1, sorry.
Yes, protein.
The prioritizing
And
protein.
are there some people who like I've heard a lot of like I haven't actually done the math on it where people seem like it's a ton of protein.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
see that out there? People recommending like maybe
Too much?
yeah.
Yeah, and you definitely hear like, "I don't know how I can eat that much protein."
Right.
Right? So, yeah, you gotta find the right amount. Yeah, I would say that obviously we need enough, but sometimes there's the recommendations that are, like, pretty darn
Really
high.
high, which I
Yeah.
think is a little hard on kidneys if
Yeah.
you overdo it.
Yeah, and then also it's like we need enough calories. So, like, sometimes filling up on too much protein cannot make room for, like, the other
Yeah.
nutrition or macronutrients that we need as well. So, that's important to think about. Number 2 would be a focus on fiber and whole grains. Looking at fiber as your friend, there's a lot of health benefits to having fiber. It's like protein, it helps with satiety because it
Mhm.
expands in our gut. It helps support blood sugar control and balance, also managing cholesterol. So, yeah, super important food there, or like component of carbohydrates rather. But during this midlife for women, we want around 21 to 25 grams of fiber per day. And so if we're really trying to, like, get a little bit of each time that we're eating or have it
Yeah.
at meal or snack time, it could be easier to kind of meet those needs. When we think about food sources of fiber, we're thinking sort of like those plant-based, like fruits and vegetables with the edible skin, our whole grains, nuts and seeds will have some fiber, beans. So
Right.
yeah, breeding those. I would say number 3 to this piece is to mind our meal timing and our portions. So eating regularly versus skipping meals.
Right. So you don't have the blood sugar going up and down and
Yeah, the blood sugar's going up and down, our energy levels going up and down. But I would say it's really about listening to your body and body's cues, right? And then being mindful of portions versus perfection, finding that balance versus cutting any food groups out. Just being again smarter with our quality of
yeah.
food.
But intermittent fasting, do you use that with some people? Because I mean, is that
Yeah.
skipping meals or there seems to be a lot of health benefits
Yeah,
from it?
I think it depends. I think there's so many forms of it, so everybody kind of sees like, oh, I mean, because simply like fasting could be not eating after dinner to not eating until we wake up for breakfast in the
Right.
morning. I think it's very individualized on if that works, and then sort of like again the quality of foods consumed during that time.
Mm.
Um, Again, not opposed to it, and some people see benefits, and I'm sure there's maybe more research coming out on that. So if it's, maybe some things that already show that it's beneficial, but I'm definitely not opposed if it works for somebody.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the fourth thing would be keep an eye on caffeine, because during this, something that's important for the bone health, right, is calcium, and
Right.
too much caffeine can interfere with
Okay.
calcium
And how much
absorption.
is that?
Yeah. So it's recommended right now. The latest recommendations that I saw at a recent conference last week is limit to 1 to 2 8 to 12 ounce servings per day.
Okay.
So if that's a couple cups of coffee, but realizing what is your serving, right?
Yeah.
Versus, if our mug's this tall versus,
Right.
and then,
It's probably like, right, isn't a cup of coffee 80 milligrams of caffeine typically, I think?
about 12 ounces, about 200 milligrams roughly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then also along with that, is that caffeine's gonna impact not only, like, possibly, like, the calcium absorption, but also our sleep, right? Which can be impacted during midlife,
Mhm.
for a lot of women. And then I've also seen sometimes where people are actually replacing their actual meals with the source of caffeine. So having a cup of coffee, and then, that could take away from meeting your nutritional needs. So I would say it's more about enjoying it, but not like letting it take the place of real nutrition, not letting it impact our sleep, of course, but also realizing besides coffee, even if it's decaf coffee, it has a little bit of caffeine, but other sources of caffeine could be like, of course, our energy drinks that are popular, chocolate, ice cream. So just being aware of,
Like coffee flavored ice cream?
yeah, I was
Or
gonna
okay.
say maybe.
Coffee flavored ice cream is the most delicious ice cream, yes.
Yeah, with like the almond slivers in them.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, yeah, just kind of just being aware of the sources of caffeine out there. And then finally, along with like the food component of it, I thought it was important to like mention the calcium and the vitamin D. Um, how they're supporting our bone health to keep our bones strong as we're aging. So of note, like vitamin D helps absorb calcium.
Right.
So they're sort of like friends in that way. Women ages 51 to 70 need 1,200 milligrams of calcium per day. When you ask about like, okay, what food sources could that be?
Right.
Yeah, dairy's like the most convenient source, but sometimes as we age, maybe, the tolerance, or if we could never maybe possibly tolerate dairy options. So it depends on the person there. But there's going to be fortified milk alternatives. Canned salmon with bones would be another one. Leafy greens. Yeah, some along those lines there. And then for like vitamin D, so 600 international units or IUs is the recommendation from the ages of 1 to 70. And then it goes up to 800 IUs after the age of 70. You can get vitamin D through food sources such as like our fatty fish like salmon, egg yolks, fortified dairy or milk alternatives. But I will say it's a little bit hard to actually meet our needs. And we're a little bit of a disadvantage because living in Alaska.
There's a little less natural sunshine. I mean, there is in the summer, but I know the rays, the angle is not
Right.
great.
Exactly. And so I would say, like, in a perfect world, we kind of know where our levels are. And then, yeah, of course, if we're able to incorporate the food sources, that's pretty ideal. But if not, supplementing is definitely not like out of the question, for us Alaskans.
How much do you do in terms of like it's a vitamin D supplementation? Do you recommend calcium supplementation for some people, or what other supplements do you tend to incorporate?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I usually, by all means, try to like promote like the food sources first, right? There's times that definitely, I've sat down with somebody and like, what is, trying to get a little bit of a recall. How much calcium are they consuming to see like, would it be beneficial to supplement or not, right? Just depending on what their diet consists of. So that's sort of where I start, and then yeah, kind of go from there. Really, yeah. But I would say that is like really those 5 things are big takeaways for like the eating part.
And do you incorporate all the like lifestyle changes when you're working with people as well? You're not just telling
Yeah.
them what to eat. You're building a wonderful eating plan with them,
Yeah.
and then you're working with them to get them
Yeah.
moving, sleeping.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think looking at the big picture versus just one piece of the puzzle, obviously staying within my scope.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know this was one of your questions too, was really like, talking a little bit about the exercise piece, and that like if you can do one thing today to
Yeah.
help boost your metabolism, that's to incorporate your strength training, Yeah. So yeah, if that's anything, a big takeaway from today as far as like the lifestyle piece and how important that is. And they recommend, 2 or 3 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes. So
Right.
max 90 minutes of your entire week,
Right.
that's pretty big.
Right. And you probably have 90 minutes and you might be spending it on social media. And you probably should find a gym or you can do resistance training at home.
So many ways to
So,
incorporate it.
so how do you, balance the idea of like, we should have discipline. You talked about smart eating. So what is like smart eating versus restrictive eating? And how do you build a plan that's smart for somebody without like making it restrictive?
I really like this question. What I sort of thought about initially is like sometimes we think like making better food choices or eating healthier equates to restriction, taking away, deprivation. So going back to that again, that diet culture, when sometimes we can actually be adding in things, right? Versus taking away. So like are we getting enough protein? What carbs are we eating? Can we build up the complex carbs? Things along those lines. I do feel like it is easier when we have a good understanding for why we are doing something.
I think that helps for everything.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
try to educate our patients as much as possible because then they know why they have
Yeah.
exercise. Somebody told me to do these.
Right, right. So I find that super helpful so they understand why you're doing something. And then also having a healthy relationship with food. I'll use terms like moderation or all foods fit. There's no good or bad foods. And I really think when that is real for us, when that's real for somebody, we have a healthy relationship with food when we're able to look at when we can say those things are true for us. So that could be helpful as far as finding that balance, but also realizing, okay, like there's certain things like I should be doing right more often. And I think going back to like, it doesn't mean that every meal and snack by any means will be perfect. But again, listening to our body's needs and making adjustments to our eating plan based off what our health goals are. Yeah.
Right, you already talked about protein, fats, and carbohydrates. Maybe like just a kind of breakdown of like not that they're good carbohydrates and bad carbohydrates.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Maybe like better carbohydrates and not so great ones, and same
Yeah.
thing with fats.
Yeah, for sure. I'll start with the fats there. So healthy fats, we think of avocado or nuts, seeds, olives, fatty fish. So they're going to support the hormone production, which is going to obviously be vital during midlife transitions like perimenopause or menopause. They also help promote satiety.
Mhm.
keeping us fuller longer, help absorb some of those fat soluble vitamins like A, D, E, K. And then you often hear like omega-3 fatty acids for like inflammation, in particular, like supporting heart and brain health, which are two areas that deserve a little bit of extra attention as we're
Yes.
aging. Yeah. And then as far as the carbohydrates, I feel like they're like the villain in our societies, like them, being like the cause for weight gain and things
Yeah.
like that, but really putting an emphasis on the key emphasis being more quality and quantity. So complex carbs, right, versus like refined. It's not to say we can't have the white rice, right? But it's more like, could we do more oats, more quinoa, or a combination of like our whole grains and refined? Like sometimes if it's spaghetti night for us, it's like whole wheat pasta combined with some like white
Mhm.
pasta or whatever to mix it up. But other complex carbs would be beans, fruit, vegetables.
Sweet potatoes.
Yeah,
I love
especially
sweet
with like
potatoes.
the skin is great for like
Yeah.
your fiber. Yeah. So anyways, these things are going to keep those blood sugars steady, can help support the cholesterol levels and also keep us fuller longer. Some of the things we've talked about. And also I think it's something is important to note is too few carbs can actually make us feel fatigued, affect our mood, and also impact our exercise performance. Yeah, there's studies of like eating enough calories, but also carbs specifically, right? We can go further, longer. We can have a better workout. It's not that we should be eating because we worked out. We should be eating to fuel our bodies.
Right.
Mm.
Right. And our body does break down carbs and our brain. I guess it can use
Yeah, it uses glucose.
uses
Yeah.
glucose. It can use, I just lost my word. What is that? Ketones too. I want to
Yeah,
get somebody to talk about the keto diet because that I feel like there is a time and place for
sure.
that. And I know that like medically there's
Mm,
evidence
yeah,
for it, but maybe not the like cultural obsession
right.
that we've had.
Mm,
So Kylie and I talked a little long, and so we have split this into two podcast episodes. So tune in next week to hear the rest of what she has to say. We talk about the upcoming holidays. We talk about some of her favorite things to eat, what she feels good about, and food prep, and whether or not that is something that we can all manage. For me, for sure, it sounds super intimidating. And so I asked some questions to clarify about what dietitians typically mean by that and what we can do and if it's for everyone. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to On the Ascent Health. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you found it helpful, share it with a friend and leave us a review. It helps more people discover the show. The views and opinions shared by guests on this podcast do not necessarily reflect my own or that of Ascent Health and Performance. The information provided is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice.